So I'm Dr. Licciardi. I'll be your doctor here. I'm a psychiatrist, and so I've been with Amen Clinics here and loving to be a part of people's brain health journey. And so I'd love to get to know you a little bit, kind of understand your background, what you've been dealing with. I know you've already met with someone, and so you've talked about some anxiety, having COVID, quite a few things going on. So kind of getting to see where you're at and where you'd like to be. So your goals going forward.
I feel like I've struggled with anxiety almost my entire life. It's definitely something that my mom also struggles with, and I'm like a spit-in image of my mom. And I definitely feel like I have gotten COVID twice, that has like elevated my brain fog. Like I have way more brain fog. I feel like my anxiety over the years through the pandemic has gotten way worse as well. Also due to some trauma, but yeah, it's been a roller coaster, but I've been trying really hard to like find ways to feel myself more comfortable without like using medication. So I'm from the Netherlands. I grew up there. I moved to America 3 years ago. My husband's American, and I don't really agree with the American way of medication, if that makes sense. Like I feel like definitely that's why I love Dr. Amen so much, is that he really looks into every other options before he puts people on medication, unless it's of course really necessary. But I love what you do with Brain MD, with the supplements that help so much. I've been using the Love Your Brain supplements.
That red box?
Yeah, I've been using that for like the past 2-3 months because the team sent it to me, and I feel like literally like a light goes on in my brain when I've taken it.
You mentioned that having COVID and getting the brain fog. Did you have other ongoing COVID issues besides brain fog, things like insomnia?
So the first time I got COVID was in 2021, and I didn't have any symptoms. I felt fine, just like tired. And then I got COVID in July after going to New Orleans for a weekend, and I had like fever. I was like down in bed for days, and like for weeks after, like I trouble breathing. Just like if I would take just the stairs or whatever, I would just like be so out of breath and just like constantly like feeling like there's a bunch of bricks on your chest. I guess that's just the only way I can really explain how it felt.
So what would you like to achieve through this process?
I'm really interested to see what my brain looks like, and I feel like that will give me a lot of validation that like what I'm feeling is real. And just to see and explore what you think, as you have so much knowledge, and I'm just always open to like for improvements and to just feel better. I feel like that a lot of times I just cannot just like sit down and chill. Like I always just like keep going and going. Like, I don't know, like I'm a Capricorn as well. So I feel like that also has to do with always being at work and always doing things. But I also like feel like I can literally not calm down.
Like you can't turn your brain off. It just like goes and goes and goes.
I can just not just sit still and watch TV. I'm always like doing things and like always. So yeah.
Okay. So let's go ahead and jump in to start taking a look at your results. Before we take a look at your scan, this is the sample scan.
Okay.
So on a SPECT scan, we're measuring your brain's activity by looking at blood flow. So as you can see, we look at these rainbow colors. The colors don't matter, it's just the shape.
Okay.
We want to see that the brain fills in evenly. So when you got the injection, it sends off a bright signal. Everywhere you have good blood flow, it fills in. If there's low blood flow, it makes a dent on the scan. If there's a 45% drop in blood flow, it will look like a hole on the scan. There's no physical holes in the brain. It's just an area of low blood flow. If you do a CAT scan or MRI, those are structural scans. They look at the physical anatomy and the brain tissue. So they're really good at telling you if you have a skull fracture, a brain bleed, a brain tumor. You can see what the physical tissue is, but they don't tell you what the brain activity is, which is what we're seeing here. So we're going to take a look at your surface scan and see how that compares here to the sample. So this is your brain looking at that underside view here, the right, the left, and the top down view. And we can see just looking at the overall general area of the brain, there's this bumpiness to it.
Yeah.
You can see how the brain is a little bit textured, right? So it's not perfectly smooth, but this is more pronounced, particularly for your age. We would expect it to be smoother than this. So low blood flow makes a dent. This is very reversible. These are mild findings. So they're there, but they are mild and they are reversible. So then once we finish going over all of the results, then we'll talk about how do we reverse this.
Okay.
We've done lots of before and after scans. The blood flow is dynamic. We can improve it and make it better. So we start by taking a look at your prefrontal cortex here. And there's a little bit of indentation here, some little bit of low blood flow. Again, mild changes.
Yeah.
Your prefrontal cortex is responsible for focus, attention, concentration, decision-making, planning, and impulse control. This little bit of drop in the prefrontal cortex could look like getting easily distracted, difficulty completing tasks, struggling with time management and organization, poor concentration, or impulsivity.
I could see that.
Sounds a little familiar?
Yeah. Especially like the last few months, I just feel like I'm so all over the place.
The next area are your temporal lobes. So this is your right, that looks good, full round. Left looks pretty good, slight indentation, a little bit of a dent here. So this is your temporal lobe here. So it is 3D, right? But we're having a little bit of low blood flow right where it comes together. That's this little bit of indent here. That's this little bit of indent right there. Your temporal lobes are very busy. They have a lot of responsibilities. So some people get 10 out of 10 symptoms off the list. Some people have 1 or 2 symptoms. Your temporal lobes are your mood regulator. They're in charge of keeping your mood steady or even keeled. If there's low blood flow, it can look like moodiness, irritability, or waves of emotion. Would you say you're pretty even keeled, or do you struggle with some moodiness?
I feel like I'm pretty even, but I do feel like my mood has, I think almost since I got COVID, has been worse.
So that's, that mood regulator in your temporal lobe. It's also in charge of your short-term memory, new learning, naming, and word finding. So when people can't remember the word for something in the middle of the sentence, forgetting people's names, having a hard time getting frustrated that it's hard to remember new things. So it's got your memory center there.
Yeah.
And then your temporal lobes are in charge of perception. So distorted perceptual experiences happen in the temporal lobe. In trauma, that often looks like disassociation. So feelings of deja vu or feeling like it doesn't feel real, or out of body experiences.
Yeah, that sounds familiar, especially the last 2.
Okay. Do you still get any out of body? Is that happening at times?
It's more, I feel like that it feels like I'm not there. Even now, I feel like I'm not here, 100%.
So that experience is located in the temporal lobes. And we do see that little bit of decrease. This is your parietal lobe. So your parietal lobes are right here on the top. And that's this indentation here. So we see that there's some mild decreases in your parietal lobes, which are in charge of your body position awareness, your visual spatial skills, and sense of direction. So this can look like not having a great internal GPS, of getting easily turned around or lost. Can look like clumsiness if you're not judging where your body is in space in relation to other objects. So stubbing your toe on the coffee table, catching your shoulder when you make a turn, any of that happening?
Yeah, I tend to like bump into like the buffet with my hip or whatever, like stuff like that. I am definitely a little bit clumsy for sure. But I feel like generally the sense of direction I'm pretty good at.
Okay.
Like I always kind of know where to go. Like I have a good sense of where to go.
Okay, good. So that's looking at the outside surface. And then when we look at the internal centers here, this is your emotional activity. Yeah. So here, the red, white, and blue, the colors do matter. So blue is your background resting level of activity, that baseline. Red is a bit more active, and white is the highest activity.
Yeah.
So you want to see white in the cerebellum. This has half your brain's neurons, so it should be really dense and active in the back. That's the little part that keeps falling off my little brain spots here. So those should be really dense and active. And then young brains are pretty busy, so we want to see a bit of scattered red. The goal is not like brain dead. You don't want zero activity.
Yeah.
You want some emotional range. You don't want to feel numb. So a bit of activity in those emotional centers is kind of what we expect to see. Then this one is your scan here. And what we can tell is that this is actually consistent with the outside surface having low activity.
Yeah.
This is also low activity. It's what we call a deactivation pattern.
Oh,
you are doing a task. You are supposed to be putting your brain up to a challenge, take a test, get it concentrated. We want to see more action happening when your brain is busy and doing something. When you're doing that task, you're busy, your brain is actually kind of low. It's underactive. That's where we see the outside surface bumpiness. And internally, we see underactivity here. The cerebellum, it should be really dense and active. There should be a lot happening, and there's just a little bit going on down here, not as much as we would like. So there's some, but it's not as active. Your cerebellum is your balance and coordination. So this is touching your finger to your nose, walking heel toe in a straight line. So you mentioned some of that clumsiness, like your gait is your cerebellum.
Okay, yeah. I was definitely expecting more active. I was like, because I always feel so anxious and like I am, like my mind never stops. So that's very interesting.
And so, you know, when we see this low activity, it's kind of a flag of, well, why is it not as active as we would expect, especially for the high amount of anxiety that you experience. Your anxiety centers really are not over revved up the way it typically is in people who have a lot of anxiety. So I think that also speaks to really we want to take a medical approach of looking at, you know, what kind of impact is COVID had on your brain, that you're with the brain fog, the fatigue, the memory. And I think that's a major part of it, that's kind of overshadowing. If you had done these scans maybe 3 years ago before COVID was even a thing, it's possible that this would have had that typical like high anxiety, high activity in those centers, but now with everything medical that's going on, it's actually deactivated.
Scary looking. And like in some way it's like also like makes sense because I feel like a lot of numbness all the time. So
what's really resonating with you?
I was expecting a lot of activity, so I'm kind of thrown back. So what do you do about it?
So we target the medical side. I'd love to work with your integrative doctor and kind of come alongside putting you on like a recovery program. So you're off to a great start with those supplements that you're taking is our like building blocks. So the fish oil, the multivitamin, it has a bunch of brain nutrients in there that is targeting healing this. And so it's what we give all of our NFL players, people who have memory problems, to help heal brains. And so you're already on track. You've been doing that the last couple of months. So and you can tell like it's helping. It's making a difference.
Yeah, for sure. I can see a huge difference when I forget 2 days and when I take it like consistency a few days. I definitely feel a difference. Just like less brain foggy, more focused, I would say. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I would probably put you on like a long haul COVID protocol. Collaborating with your integrative doctor, kind of what they're already doing and kind of filling in the gaps. So some of the things in the long COVID protocol are like vitamin D, the omega-3s you're already taking. Yeah. We may do things, some other targeted supplements as well to add, to boost a little bit more to what you're doing. So meditation, therapy, medical health, I think that's plenty to work on for the next month or so. Is there anything else that you wanted to be sure to tell me about?
No, I'm just like, I'm excited to start working on this and see improvements. And it is crazy though what COVID does, and there's so many people that still think it's a hope.
Oh, no.
Yeah, it's very, very real to me at least.
And we find like young, healthy people getting bad long COVID. Yeah. You know, like athletic, eating healthy, they don't have any pre-existing things, and then getting this really bad long COVID with anxiety, insomnia, fatigue, brain fog, all of this.
When I was sharing on my social media about still not feeling good after like weeks, that I got flooded with messages with so many of my followers, and the majority of my followers are like in their 20s, and they're all like struggling so bad with like so much, like that some can't even still to go to work. Like it's really, really awful.
Kellyanne, it was so nice to meet you today. I'm really looking forward to getting to work with you on this journey as we go down the path towards healing your brain and getting you feeling better and calmer.
Yeah, I'm really excited, and thank you so much for today. I learned a lot about my brain, and I'm just excited to start working on it to improve it.